Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Coronavirus, a Global Pandemic, where we discuss the matters of the coronavirus pandemic that is going on in the UK and around the world at the moment. So far, it's been just over 2 weeks since the PM Boris Johnson has announced a lockdown, and since then, many of us have been within our homes, working from home. Schools have closed, gatherings have stopped, gyms have closed, and any non-essential shops, they too have also closed. Today, we're joined with a number of guests. We have Imtiaz Patel from the Muslim Ghusl Service. We have Maulana Yunus Tudwala, Dr. Hamza, someone from the East London Masjid, and Sheikh Saad Al-Qadi. But before we get to them, inshallah, I would just like to remind the viewers at home, feel free to call in at any time and join the discussion. The number's at the bottom of the screen, so just pick up the phone and call in. We've got a landline and a WhatsApp number, so feel free to call in and join the discussion or ask your questions, inshallah. But right now, I would like to welcome our two guests, Imtiaz Patel, wa alaikum and Maulana Yunus. Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So, Imtiaz, you are part of the Muslim Ghusl Service, yes?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes. And so what's your role at the Muslim Ghusl Service?
Basically, I'm just a volunteer. Most of us are volunteers there at the moment. So we've just started off an organisation to kind of assist people who are experiencing difficulties in terms of getting ghusls done and basically getting people buried. There's a lot of panic out there from people in terms of, what the procedure is, and I'm sure Maulana Yunus will explain, Sheikh Yunus will explain what is out there, what the problems are, what people are encountering, but there's no need for people to panic. We are out there, there's a lot of organisations out there trying to assist and get people getting the ghusls done, getting people buried as quick as possible, but basically we're there just to try and assist people and as soon as possible and get things done as quickly as possible.
Okay, mashallah. And Maulana Yunus, you're the head of chaplaincy at Barts Health NHS Trust, right?
That's correct, yes.
And how's it been there? How's it been since the coronavirus pandemic has started?
Yeah. I mean, over the past few weeks, we have seen a large increase in numbers of people who are dying of coronavirus, of COVID-19. And that includes a large number of Muslim community as well. And I'm also part of the National Burial Council. And we have been seeing across the country, as part of the National Burial Council, an increase in the number of Muslims who are dying, especially in the West Midlands and especially in London. Some of the cemeteries are now overburdened by the number of people that are dying. So it's getting quite difficult for everyone involved, whether it's the bereavement service, whether it's the chaplaincy, whether it's the mortuary services, whether it's the funeral directors, or whether it's families who are suffering the grief of a loss within their own families.
Okay, subhanallah. And we saw you on the front line at the opening of Nightingale Hospital. This hospital is opened up within a matter of just a few days, which is an amazing achievement to set something up so quickly and so rapidly. I'm guessing you've been part of that process.
Yeah, so the Nightingale Hospital was just a project that was an imagination about 2-3 weeks ago. And within 10 days, through the help of the army, through the help of the NHS, through the help of managers, support staff, alhamdulillah, they all came together and they created a hospital within the Excel, which now will be able to take at least 500 patients if it needs to now. I understand that the first patients will be going in today, and then slowly will go to a capacity of 500, and then if it needs to, it will go to a capacity of 4,000 ventilated ITU beds. So it's an absolutely amazing achievement by everyone coming together.
Okay, mashallah. And just tell us about your role as the head of chaplaincy. What does your role consist of at the Barts?
I mean, my role is about making sure that the emotional, spiritual, religious support for the community is provided to all faiths and those people who have no faith. So what we do is we have chaplains from Roman Catholic, from Church of England, from Muslim, from the Jewish community who will support patients whenever there is support needed. And especially at this time, in time of COVID-19, a lot of families are not able to see their loved ones. And because of that, what we are finding is that we are there to try and communicate the family, or make contact with the family, connect the families with their loved ones through mediums like Zoom or Skype, so that families are able to see their loved one and speak to their loved one.
Okay, mashallah. And just before we go talk a bit more about corona, could you explain to us the process of a burial? So once a patient passes away, what happens?
Okay, so I think many of the viewers need to understand that previously, before the emergency legislation was brought in, and before the coronavirus, when a death took place, what used to happen is that a death takes place, the death certificate is written by a doctor, this is collected by the family physically, the family will then go to the register office, and then the register office gives them the original death certificate and gives them the green form for burial. That was the previous process. Now, since the coronavirus legislation has been passed, because the bereavement staff want to remain safe from families who might have been in contact with those who have coronavirus, everything is being done online. So once a death happens, the family will be contacted by the bereavement office by phone, and they will be asked about their details, and then the death certificate will be written and it will be scanned, and it will be sent to the register office without the family being involved physically, only being involved by phone and by giving their details. The register office might phone the family and then take some more details, and then they will issue the green form, again not to the family physically, they will send it to the preferred cemetery or to the preferred funeral director. So the family needs to be aware that everything is being done online. The bereavement office will call them, the register office will call them. If they don't have any contact from them, then they need to call the bereavement office, but they need to think about who their funeral director will be and who their cemetery will be, because the green form will be sent to them, which will allow for burial.
Okay, so and then once they've collected the green form, what's the next process after this? Does the ghusl happen, or what happens, or do they just go straight to the graveyard?
So there's a lot of rumors and misinformation about what happens with the funerals of Muslims who have died from coronavirus or COVID-19. Some people are saying that no ghusl can take place. Some people are saying that we can't touch the body, etc., etc. In some areas that might be the case, but that is local policy. The national guidelines of this country, Public Health England, the World Health Organization, the European Science Organization, and other health and safety executive, all of them say that if a person is trained and they're wearing the correct PPE, personal protective equipment, and the facilities are ventilated, and we're doing it in the right manner, then ghusl can take place. Ghusl can take place. Now, we're not saying that every single mosque in the country should do ghusl, because their facilities might not allow them to do so, and they might not have had the training. What we are encouraging, and Imtiaz will mention further because he has been trained and he has been training other people, what we are encouraging is that those who want to come forward, who are under 60 years old, who are over 18 years old, who are healthy, who do not have any health issues, and they want to be trained, they should come forward, get trained. They will be given the right PPE, and then ghusl can take place. When doing the ghusl, there are some precautions that need to take place. One, you need to move, when you move the body, it should be minimal movement of the body. Minimal movement of the body. Number two, you should refrain from splashes. And that's why we say that you should not use a hose with a shower head. Preferably, you just use a hose gently over the body, or you use a jug and a bucket and pour it over the body. And thirdly, make sure that everyone who is doing the ghusl wear the correct PPE, and they know how to wear the PPE, and they know how to take off the PPE. Public Health England has taken out videos of how to do that, and doctors, Muslim doctors, are training individuals who are doing ghusl so that they wear the PPE the correct way, and especially when taking off the PPE, they must do it the correct way. Finally, the family must understand that unfortunately, because this is coronavirus and we want to minimize the risk to the people who are doing ghusl, families will not be allowed in to perform the ghusl, and a few members, if any, will be allowed to attend the funeral if they have not been in contact with the family member who has died from coronavirus. We want to keep these people who are doing the ghusl safe. The biggest risk for them is not from the body that has died. The biggest risk for them is from the people who have had contact with the person who has had coronavirus, and then they come into the ghusl area or the funeral area, and they will be the ones who will be creating the greatest risk to the ghusl providers and to the funeral providers.
SubhanAllah, Imtiaz, tell us how it is compared to how it is before coronavirus. So pre-coronavirus, what was the ghusl process like? Because this seems like there's a lot going on here. Sure. You've got like a PPE, you've got ventilators, you've got specific ways to take off your uniform and your equipment and the way you wash your body. So how is it actually before coronavirus kicked in?
In terms of basically our organisation that we've set up, that's only been set up recently. Prior to that, I've been part of the Patel Muslim Burial Trust, which alhamdulillah we're very, very fortunate indeed, whereby we've got extreme, it's locally purchased, and because of the community, there's a lot of volunteers who've actually done the work themselves. Health and safety has always been paramount, regardless of corona or regardless of whatever it is. As a Muslim community, health and safety is paramount to us. So that's always ensured. However, obviously, with everything going on and the problems and the hype and what people hear, and obviously the safety aspect of everyone, we've got to ensure that we comply with everything possible in every way, over and above. If we can exceed expectations, that's what we try and do. So basically, because the welfare of everyone who is volunteering, I've got to emphasize these are volunteers, these are not paid staff. Everyone who is doing it, alhamdulillah, Maulana's organized through the Imam Forum, a lot of ulamas who are basically conducting the actual ghusls that are taking place for the men. For the women, we've got a lot of ladies who have actually volunteered, trained, etc., things like that. So we're just ensuring that, they comply fully with all the legislation, all the regulations, and in every way we try and safeguard them from any health and safety aspects that we can do.
Okay, subhanAllah. And Maulana Yunus, so this panic, because I've seen some messages flying around about there's a shortage of, there's a stack of bodies being stored in the mortuary, in the hospitals. There's no ghusl services available. There's no bags available. Are these rumors true?
So there's quite a few rumors going around, quite a few misinformation being given by different individuals. And sometimes it's not done deliberately. It's because of the information that they receive, and they've tried to help genuinely, but unfortunately they've been given misinformation. So number one of the misinformation that was going around last week is that there are 33 Muslim bodies in one London hospital. That was not true. Okay. Another misinformation that was going around is that if these bodies are not collected, then they will be cremated. Again, no Muslim bodies will be cremated, inshallah, because we are able to handle those bodies. As long as we are able to handle those bodies, inshallah, there will be no cremation. Thirdly, is there a shortage of body bags? Yes, there is a shortage of body bags across the country and in hospitals as well. However, can a funeral director collect a body which is not in a body bag? Yes, they can. So if Imtiaz as a funeral director took his van to the hospital and that hospital didn't have a body bag, Imtiaz is still able to collect those bodies which are not in a body bag. So yes, there is a shortage of body bags. Some funeral directors do not want to collect bodies without a body bag. and yes, there is a shortage in the hospitals, that's a given. But in terms of collecting the bodies, anyone can collect a body which does not have a body bag, because the World Health Organization says that a body does not have to be in a body bag if it's died from COVID-19. The Public Health England says that a body does not have to be in a body bag if it's died from COVID-19. Other organizations, the European Science Organization also says that the body does not have to be in a body bag if it's died from COVID-19, because after death, the risk is low. Risk is low. Low does not mean no risk. And I understand that, and we need to be very clear that low risk does not mean no risk. And that's why we say to the funeral directors who are collecting, make sure you're wearing a mask and make sure you're wearing an apron when you collect. So if it doesn't have a body bag, then you're still covering yourself with that low risk.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. We've just got a poster here with a couple of points. If we can just go through that poster, inshallah. So the poster is by Newham Muslim Ghusl. So the first procedure is where you contact a cemetery. This is a procedure after a COVID-19 death. Do you want to talk us through this?
Yeah, sure. Basically, this is the form, the organisation that I represent at the moment. There's a lot of other organisations out there. And what I would say to people is, please contact your local amenities first. That is the first paramount thing. We're there, inshallah, to help, but primarily we're there for Newham residents. We are there to help, like I said, but if your local amenities, contact them first. So there's organisations in Waltham Forest, similar sort of organisation, who actually provide the service as well. We've also got other services in South London. So there's Eternal Gardens based in South London, Masjid Quba in Stamford Hill. They provide a service for the Ghusl service as well. There is Gardens of Peace. However, they're so inundated at the moment that if we use the other facilities first, then it would help them massively. So we're there, but primarily we're there for Newham. If that service can be used, people can go to their local organisations first, and then come, and then that would help out a lot. In terms of us, what we're doing, and the others follow the same procedure, is to contact your local cemetery first in terms of trying to find a local cemetery, funeral director, who can basically find a grave space. Now, I've got to emphasise here, this is the biggest problem we're facing at the moment, which is the grave space. Okay, but no need to panic. Take your time, phone around. I'll explain later on in the show some of the problems that we've encountered, even today, one of the experiences that we currently had. But please try and contact a local cemetery first so you can get a grave space there. People do, for example, want to go Gardens of Peace, but there's only a limited amount that they can do. And we've got to try and understand at this particular juncture and particular time that we've got to be a bit understanding in terms of what can be achieved and how it can be achieved as well.
So Gardens of Peace is the Muslim cemetery located in East London, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Do they cover the entire London or the entire UK, or is it just specific areas?
Well, basically, they're there as a service for all Muslims persons. So if they're available, on a normal, I would say a normal occasion, normal being not the pandemic we're in at the moment, they would cover wherever the need is. However, we've got to understand that London at the moment, we're completely inundated in terms of what we need to provide as a service, and therefore they're quite restricted in terms of what they can do. Obviously, there's a certain amount of burials that can take place every day as well, so we've got to try and be understanding towards that. So that would be the first thing, to try and find a cemetery place. After that's done, like Maulana Sheikh Yunus already explained, contact the hospital who will provide the information about death certificate and death registration. For us, it's very, very good at the moment that it's done online, so it's a quick procedure. Obviously, as Muslims, we need to do a burial as quick as possible. So this procedure actually makes it easier in terms of the time constraint required. Thereafter, what you can do is contact the registry office with the funeral direct information. So if you've got the information about the grave space that has already been allocated, that can be done thereby. And then after that is to make the arrangements regarding the ghusl and the transport, etc., where people are finding a lot of problems. Here, once again, we're there. That's a service that are provided by the other organisations that I've already mentioned within the local boroughs. So basically what we do, the concerned person, if they're making their own arrangements, that's all well and good. If they need assistance, give us a call. We will make arrangements for the ghusl. We've already got spaces allocated in certain, like Maulana Yunus already explained, health and safety is paramount. So there's certain masjids that we've ensured that are are adhering to all the regulations that are there. So we've got those. There's a separate one for ladies. There's a separate one for males as well. So we ensure that basically we'll collect the body from the mortuaries after we get the information and the information regarding the green slips, etc. So we'll assist the families by going down there, collecting the body, taking the body for ghusl, wherever that may be, with a family member, again, adhering to the compliance regarding whether they've been in contact with the person or not. Once the ghusl has actually taken place, we'll transport the body to the actual cemetery, wherever it's been allocated, assisting the family there, and where the actual burial will take place.
Okay, subhanAllah. So this poster is quite informative. And let's just take this opportunity to remind the viewers at home, if you want to call in, maybe you have a question about this process, or you want to just take part in the discussion, inshallah. So feel free to call in on the number at the bottom of the screen, where we can take your calls, inshallah. So let's just get back to Maulana Yunus, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Maulana, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. So just before we part, inshallah, Maulana, if they have a loved one who has passed because of COVID-19.
Ya Allah. This is a difficult one because I think with COVID-19 and the coronavirus, the issue with families is that some families are not able to say goodbye to their loved ones. As you might have heard, majority of the hospitals are in lockdown. Only if there is a person who is dying, they might allow one person to attend. And that's really difficult for the family. Who are they going to choose who is going to attend? And secondly, they might not be able to attend the ghusl. They won't be attending the ghusl, and they won't be able to attend the funeral, majority of them, if majority of the cemeteries are now restricting the numbers to only 5 individuals because of the dangers that they pose to the people who are working in the cemetery. So my advice to all those who are listening, first of all, we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves each and every one of you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save you from all illnesses, especially this illness. But if Allah wills that somebody dies from this illness and you could not be there, or only one of the family members were there, then as Sheikh Asim Khan mentioned in one of his Facebook posts recently, that remember, inshallah, the angels will be with that individual. The angels will be with that individual. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ mentions that if it's a good person, then the ruh is collected by beautiful angels, and they wrap the ruh with scented cloth, and they take it up to the heavens. So inshallah, do not worry. Inshallah, the angels will be with your loved one. And secondly, as I mentioned in a post recently as well, that we as human beings want to be with our loved ones. But what's more important is that when our loved one goes into the grave, as long as they are with the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah is happy with them, and Allah grants them everything that you wish for them, that's more important than us being with them. If they are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with them, that is the most important. So from our side, let's hope that everyone who goes with tawbah, sincere repentance, sincere tawbah, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they meet Allah in a state that Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I mean, Maulana, I believe we have a caller on the line. Let's just take a phone call, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, brother. What's your question?
My question is for the Maulana. It's just come to my mind. There's a lot of conspiracy theories floating around, and a lot of the Muslim youth are involved in spreading these conspiracy theories. I just wanted to ask, what is the Islamic ruling on actually following a conspiracy and following a conspiracy theory and spreading it? What is the ruling on that?
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Maulana, did you hear that?
Yes, I heard the question, and I think the video that I put out last week, the 2-minute video in which I mentioned that we receive a lot of messages on our WhatsApp and on our social media, and we need to verify these messages before we amplify. So verify before you amplify. Verify before you amplify. Majority of these conspiracy theories are not verified. the 5G theories, etc., etc. I mean, they're just not verified. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Kafa bil mar'i kadhiban an yuhadditha bi kulli ma sami'a." That it is enough for a person to become a liar that he spreads everything that he hears. Today, someone sent a message and said, what are you doing at home? And they said, oh, I'm doing import-export business. So what do you mean? He said, I'm receiving messages and then I'm forwarding messages. I'm importing and exporting messages. And that's what we're doing today. Import-export business at home on the WhatsApp. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stop us from this. This is a time to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people will say, well, it's a Chinese conspiracy. Some people will say it's a 5G conspiracy. Some people will say American conspiracy. It doesn't matter what it is. At the moment, people are dying. And if death is not reminding us of death, kafa bil mauti wa'izan, that death is enough a reminder. Death is enough a reminder. Death is around us. Every day we're getting figures of 500, 600, 700. And instead, if you're just following conspiracy theories, there's something wrong with our hearts. We need to rectify our hearts. We need to wash our sins. And we need to start thinking about death. And we need to think about our future in the hereafter.
Okay. Jazakallah khair for your time, Maulana. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Jazakallah khair for your advice and the insight into the whole the burial process and the process that people have to go through. So may Allah reward you for your efforts, inshallah. And we'll hopefully speak to you soon, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
So, inshallah, after the break, we still have you as well.
Yeah, inshallah.
So we'll go through a few more things with regards to the actual, the ghusl and the funeral service, inshallah. So, and also I'd like to remind the viewers, feel free to call in after the break, inshallah. You can call in on the number at the bottom of the screen. Call in to have a discussion, or maybe ask a question to Brother Imtiaz here, who'll be able to answer your questions with regards to the whole process, with regards to the ghusl, the funerals, collecting forms and whatnot. After the break, like I said, mentioned before, we've got Brother Imtiaz. We've also got a doctor who's working in the intensive care unit in London. We have Khizr Muhammad from East London Masjid, and we have Sheikh Saad Al-Qadi. So there's a lot going on. Pick up the phone, join in with the discussion, call in with your questions, inshallah, and we'll see you after the break. And you can also message on social media if you do not want to speak on the phone, or if you don't, just type up your message and we will get your messages right here to my little tablet right here, inshallah. So hopefully we'll see you after the break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Assalamu alaikum. This time I've been waiting for the lady of my life. Thank you, my Allah, for sending me my wife. She's a blessing from the sky above, like Adam had Hawa. Alayhi salam, I pray to Allah. We can be here for each other every night and day. Even through the ups and downs, we could find a better day. Inshallah, you'll have my deen in every single way. Subhanallah. Alhamdulillah. I will fight to protect you, inshallah. And we have Allah by our side. Inshallah, we will be together in Jannah, in Jannah, in Jannah, in Jannah. My wife, you're so unique. You're like a desert rose. I will always stand by your side through the highs and lows. Will you be my Khadija, the Prophet's loving wife? Peace be upon him, and I pray to Allah. We can be here for each other every night and day. Even through the ups and downs, we could find a better day. Inshallah, you'll have my deen in every single way. Subhanallah, I wanna say, you're my wife, Alhamdulillah. I will fight to protect you, inshallah. I will protect you, inshallah. And we have Allah by our side. Inshallah, we will be together in Jannah. Jannah. Inshallah, I will live by what the Prophet said. Peace be upon him. That the greatest men in Islam are the ones who treat their wives best. You can always count on me. You can always talk to me. You know that I'll be there. You're my wife, Alhamdulillah. I will fight to protect you, inshallah. Inshallah. And we have Allah by our side. Inshallah, we will be together in Jannah.
يتدبرون القرآن.
One day the Prophet ﷺ came out to the companions radiallahu anhum, and he said to them, don't you bear witness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship and he has no partners? Don't you bear witness that I am the messenger of Allah? Don't you bear witness that the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the companions radiallahu anhum, they said, yes, O Prophet of Allah. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, فَأَبْشِرُوا, have the glad tidings, the great news as a result of this. Because the Quran has two ends to it. One end with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and one end in your hands. Then he said to them alayhi salatu wassalam, فَتَمَسَّكُوا بِهِ, hold fast to it, because you would never be led astray and you would never be perished if you're holding fast to the Book of Allah. Because of that, join us every week in Quran in Depth, where we recite and reflect and ponder over the verses of the Quran. We go in depth into the verses, following the ways of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum. When they used to take the verses, one set of verses after another, they would recite it, they would reflect upon the meanings of it, and they would act according to it, and then they would go to the next set of verses. Join us every week in Quran in Depth, so that we would recite and reflect and learn more about the Book of Allah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our life and to make us among those who follow the Quran and the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
it's calling us to establish this hiwar, this dialogue between ourselves and between the non-Muslims, and to use hikmah. The waves are coming, you're trapped, fitna is coming everywhere. How can I get out of this fitna that I'm in? Send me the rope. Why did Allah send the Quran to you, to all of mankind? As a source of guidance, as a kitab, a blessed book to be reflected upon. And secondly, the ba'th, the resurrection. Prepare yourself for Yawm al-Qiyamah, when you're going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is aqeedah, this is the core of aqeedah, this is the focus of the Quran. They want these dialects and these slangs to spread so the Arabs themselves can't even understand the Quran properly. This is a choice you have to make now. Because once the angel of death comes to you and takes your soul, there's no turning back, there's no other choice.
يتدبرون القرآن.
One day the Prophet ﷺ came out to the companions radiallahu anhum, and he said to them, don't you bear witness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship and he has no partners? Don't you bear witness that I am the messenger of Allah? Don't you bear witness that the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the companions radiallahu anhum, they said, yes, O Prophet.
Assalamu alaikum. I want to testify.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Coronavirus, the global pandemic. I would like to remind the viewers at home, feel free to call in on the number at the bottom of the screen to join in with the discussion or ask questions. We have with us right now Imtiaz Patel, who is part of the Muslim Ghusl services, and joining us quite shortly, inshallah, will be Dr. Hamza, who's a practicing doctor in the intensive care unit in one of the hospitals in London. So welcome back. So just before the break, we were talking about a number of aspects in relation to the whole burial process.
Yeah.
How long does it actually take to bury someone? So from the time of their death till the time they get buried in the grave? How long does this take?
Different people, you can't exactly say that for everyone it's going to be the same time limit, etc., things like that. Just to give you an idea, I'm part of the Muslim, the Baruchi community, Patel community, so we've got our own cemetery. We're fortunate enough, alhamdulillah, that our elders, they bought some piece of land, etc., where we actually got, where we've got private land, etc., in terms of getting buried there. A lady passed away last night. By 11:30 this morning, we were doing the burial, alhamdulillah.
Within 24 hours?
I'd say shorter than 24 hours. She passed away last night. By 11:30, by 12 o'clock, I was driving the van out of there to pick up a body. Alhamdulillah, that's how fast it was. But again, we rely completely on volunteers. That is relied by, I mean, there's 5-6 names I can then read off: Said, Yunus, Iqbal, Idris, Afzal, these guys who commit so much time there. I mean, a lot of the actual process is relied upon volunteers and the amount of time that they commit. But people are unaware of what actually goes on behind the scenes. Until one of our family members actually passes away, we've got no idea. Well, I personally think we don't have much idea in terms of what it actually involves. And, you know, the commitment, the time, what the processes, the procedures, what actually involves can take place. And therefore, it's hard to say how much time it would actually take. Like I said previously, alhamdulillah, because we're getting the green slips online at the moment, like Molan said, via email, etc., in those manners, the process is a lot quicker. So it can happen very, very quick indeed. Yes, this morning, basically, we had a burial whereby we had to pick a body up. So we picked the body up from the mortuary, took it straight for ghusl. So we have times arranged at the moment for the ghusls as well. I'm talking about the new ghusl service at the moment that I represent. So we have the time booked there. So we pick the body up from the mortuary just half an hour prior, take it straight for ghusl. Once the ghusl is done, take it straight to the cemetery, and we do the burial as soon as possible. Again, because of health and safety compliance, the regulations, etc., we don't want to let anyone else become involved too much as well. Hence why, so we try and do it as quick as possible that we can do that can happen. However, people are experiencing problems as well. Let me not hide behind that fact at all. One of the scenarios that we had, and what led us to kind of create this service as well, is there was a brother, I think he must have come via Sheikh Yunus, his relative died, but we got a phone call. The brother's mother had died, I think it was last Tuesday gone, so a week ago. By Saturday, we were receiving a call after the brother had been to pillar to post, basically where he just didn't know what to do. There was nothing arranged at all. So from Tuesday to Saturday, nothing had been done. Alhamdulillah, we were able to assist him, in terms of the green slip, in terms of finding the cemetery space, etc., things like that. And we were the brother, I think, buried his mother on Monday. So it was done then. Alhamdulillah, it did occur.
Okay.
So, but that doesn't occur in all the occurrences. Obviously, because people are now getting involved with through this, the services have been created whereby we can try and assist people a lot quicker. Therefore, they are becoming quicker. I need to...
Sorry, I believe we just have a call on the line.
Sure.
Assalamu alaikum, Mrs. Bashir.
Yes. Wa alaikum salam. I just have a question. What is the basic cost for the burial?
Okay, Jazakallah khair.
Approximately. I mean, I don't want to be exact, just approximate.
That's a very good question. Thank you for your question. Do you have any other questions?
No, that's just what I would like to know.
Okay, Jazakallah khair.
Okay. I can't say the exact cost what it could be. Obviously, the majority of the cost involves the actual cemetery place itself, the grave space itself, and that differs from cemetery to cemetery. So we can't exactly say what it, and also the services that are involved within there. Alhamdulillah, the ghusl service and the transport service, we're supplying whatever is done at a minimal cost itself. All the people we have, alhamdulillah, and I can't emphasize how grateful we are to them, especially through the imams and the people that are doing it. They're all volunteers. So the cost is absolute minimal in terms of what we do there. However, in terms of the cemetery spaces, that's something we can't exactly emphasize. There are some places which charge around £2,000. There are certain places that the grave space is charging around £3,000, £3,500. All differs. So we can't exactly say the exact cost is going to be £2,000 or £2,500 there. Because, like I said, there's no fixed price in terms of actually going ahead in terms of that. So, hard to say, unfortunately.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. I would like to welcome our next panelist. He is a doctor and a practicing doctor in one of the intensive care units within London. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Hamza.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu. So, what's the latest in the ICUs?
So they're all far above their capacities. So there's a lot more patients than we normally look after. So in a unit that might be looking after 8 to 10 patients, now they're looking after 25 to 30 patients, and that's the case across most hospitals, especially in London.
And there's news reports suggesting infections are getting lower. Does this correlate with the reality in the ICU?
It's difficult for me to say, just because in intensive care we deal with cases that are the sickest, and things don't change very quickly. So once someone's on a ventilator, they don't tend to come off a ventilator for it. It can be days to weeks, and we're finding with a lot of these patients it's taking longer than it normally does. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about that, if I'm honest.
Okay, and just give us an insight. What is life like in the ICU pre-corona, and what is like now?
I guess the biggest difference is everything that we have to wear. So the PPE, the personal protective equipment that we have to wear, it's not very nice to wear. And when you're inside the ITU, and when this started, there was maybe a bay or one room, and you had to wear it in that room, and then you could come out of it for the rest of the intensive care. For many places now, the whole of the ITU is what we call dirty. And so we're having to wear the PPE all the time. And so after a few hours, it can become, annoying. You might want to scratch your face. You might want a glass of water. You might want to go to the loo. And it takes time to take it all off and get clean and do what you want, and then have to come back and put everything back on again, and so on and so forth. And then there's just the amount of patients. There's more patients than we've ever looked after as well, I guess.
Okay, and at the moment, I believe there's about 52,000 recorded cases of COVID-19, and from there, there's about 5,000 to 6,000, about 6,000-ish deaths that have taken place. What's the chances of recovery?
So, generally, if people who come to intensive care, of the number of, that's obviously looking at those numbers that you've mentioned, it seems quite high, the mortality, but actually there's a large number of people who have COVID who haven't been tested. And so the actual number is a lot lower in terms of the mortality. That being said, I guess the way to think about it is everyone who gets admitted to hospital with COVID, about 10% of those will end up in intensive care. And generally, of the ones who end up in intensive care, maybe there's a kind of 1% to 2% mortality. And
for the viewers at home, what signs should they really look at? I know the government has provided guidelines like if you have a cough or a temperature, then isolate for 7 or 14 days.
So actually, I think it would be good to talk about in terms of what's the journey of a person who comes in. And most of the time, it tends to be shortness of breath. Most people end up coming into hospital because they're too short of breath. The reason they become admitted into hospital is because they require some oxygen. And that's what's preventing them from going home. So on the ward, they end up being on oxygen. And over time, that may get worse. Generally, it tends to be kind of day 10 or so of them having the infection. And by this time, they may end up in intensive care because the oxygen that they're receiving isn't enough to oxygenate their blood. And so what happens is they need to be put onto a ventilator. Also, I should say, there are a certain number of patients who won't end up in intensive care, and that's because they are too, in terms of their recovery post-intensive. Intensive care, when you go there, it takes a big toll on your body. And if you haven't got a good baseline to begin with, it's not going to get any better after you come out of intensive care. So certain patients are not considered fit for intensive care, and so they may actually only end up staying on the ward. And there are, people who we might all know who have passed away on a ward, and that's because they're not for intensive care. But if you do end up going into intensive care, you end up on a ventilator usually, right? And so that's where we put a tube into your windpipe, and you get put on this machine that helps you breathe. And really, when you get to intensive care, not a lot of people completely understand what happens in intensive care, but generally we support organs. So we support the lungs, we give you some really strong drugs to take care of your heart, we might put you on a machine for your kidney. And that's the way to ask. If there's people watching and they have family in intensive care, they're really the questions you want to ask the doctors or whoever calls you, or if you get through to them, is how much support is my relative on? Are they just on the lungs? If it is the lungs, are they on lots of oxygen or not so much? Or is it in terms of, are they being supported for drugs for their heart? Are they on a machine for their kidneys? And generally, the more organs you have being supported, the worse off you do.
Okay. Jazakallah khair for the insight. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And we would obviously like to thank you as well for your hard work and your team's hard work as well.
Can I ask Dr. Hamza a question before it goes?
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Hamza, sorry, my name's Imtiaz. I'm just going to ask you on a personal level. At the moment, my father-in-law's in hospital, but obviously the family, etc., they're worried, etc., things like that as well. But alhamdulillah, he's recovering very, very well. But on a personal, and I'm sure people have this idea as well, because people have this preconception that if a person's going to hospital for COVID, they're going to come out in a body bag. I think that, you know, people have this sort of mentality that, hold on, that's the only reason why they're going in there. How would you reassure people and kind of say to them that, hold on, listen, that is not the case. The amount of recoveries, I mean, I personally, I know quite a lot of people who were given 24 hours and alhamdulillah, they made a fabulous recovery. But what would you emphasize to people out there?
Like I said, the numbers, the vast majority end up better and recovering. The vast majority. So just because somebody's gone into hospital, it's just like I said, even out of the ones who go in hospital, only 1 out of 10 who are in hospital go to intensive care. So that means 9 other patients are there and they're getting better and they go home. So really, I mean, the chance of even them going to intensive care is really small. And then the chances of them, you know, not making it through intensive care is even smaller, you know. And so I don't think it's always helpful to kind of worry about these things. But, you know, it's a time for reflection for us, like the Imam was saying before. You know, it's a time for us to reflect on our own lives and our own relationship with Allah. And we make dua for everyone, but we also remember that, you know, when it's certain people's time, it's certain people's time. Whether COVID was here or COVID wasn't here, if it was their time, it was their time. And it doesn't matter what causes, you know, their death. But like I said, the vast majority, they don't even make it to intensive care, let alone dying.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair for your time once again. We'll hope to catch you soon, inshallah. Take care, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to just remind the viewers at home, feel free to call in on the number at the bottom of the screen to join in with the discussion or ask your questions. The number is just at the bottom of the screen. So far, we still have Brother Imtiaz with us, who's part of Muslim Ghusl Services, and he can possibly answer your questions regarding the burial or the ghusl process. So just before we joined Brother Hamza, you were speaking about the cost of the funeral.
Sure.
Now, another question some people may have: when the burial takes place for a Muslim, you can see other people, they get buried in, like, you have a headstone, you have graves, you have coffins, and then people probably buy all sorts of different types of coffins and whatnot.
Sure.
Is this all necessary, or can it be very simply just the white cloth and?
Sure. Obviously, I'm not an ulama, so I can't answer that question in terms of Islamic wise, whatever. But in terms of the experience that I've had in terms of what goes on, in London, obviously other parts of the country, depends where you are, there's regulations whereby they do have to do about coffins, etc. But alhamdulillah, in London, we're fortunate enough where we don't have to. We had an experience today whereby we went to one of the cemeteries, done on a last minute basis, so we had to go down there, went to the cemetery, and they didn't have the actual wood. So what we tend to do is, for example, in terms of, we call it like a wooden grave kind of thing. So basically what happened, a wooden box, but what we use is planks, which is basically just put across the body at the time, rather than actually put in a casket and then basically buried inside a casket thing as well. Alhamdulillah, in most of the cemeteries, that's how it's done as well. But one of the cemeteries, like I was saying, we went along today, they didn't have those. It wasn't a Muslim cemetery, it was, we went to a local one, so they didn't have the actual woods there. But they provided us with half an hour, so the family luckily went away, got those planks, and then basically got the burial done in that manner. It's a learning curve for us as well, because we're working with a lot of cemeteries that we've never ever worked with before. So what their procedures are, what their processes are, is quite important to ask certain questions when we're actually doing it, so we actually know the process there, and you know, you can be prepared when you actually go down to do the burial itself, whether it's through us or whether it's through someone else, you know, we can be prepared for that.
Okay, mashallah.
Yeah.
We have our next panelist with us. Our next panelist is our brother Khidr Muhammad from East London Masjid. And just before we get to him, let's remind the viewers at home, feel free to call in. The number's at the bottom of the screen. Call in, ask your questions, or join in with the discussion, inshallah. Let's take it to Brother Khidr. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Khidr. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
So, what's your role at the East London Masjid?
Well, I'm the media communications manager at East London. Joined about 8 months.
Sorry, I think I think there's some technical issues there, Brother Khidr. So inshallah, we'll call you back. We'll just try again, inshallah, in a second. So just before we get back to them.
Fine. Yeah.
So people have, each cemetery have their own regulations and rules in terms of if they can be buried in terms of the white cloth, the coffin.
Yeah, I mean, coffin and all that is done all the time anyway,
Yeah.
so there's no issue in regards to that as well. The ghusl is done, bodies are in the coffins themselves, and then basically, buried in the proper Islamic manner. So, alhamdulillah, we don't have no issues like that in the UK. So, alhamdulillah, we're very, very fortunate in terms of what actually goes on. It's done in a proper Islamic manner. People do have a lot of concerns. Like Monana said earlier on, Sheikh Yunus said earlier on, what's the procedure? Are we allowed ghusls? Are we not allowed ghusls? There's so much hearsay going on, so many messages sprouted about, which are inaccurate and completely false. I'm pleased to say that alhamdulillah is done in the proper Islamic manner. There is no problems, and inshallah we won't encounter any problems, and it's just a matter of us to actually cope. I mean, the biggest problem we are encountering is grave space. Let's not beat about the bush there. In terms of the burial spaces available, there's a very extremely high demand in terms of what's actually required.
So in terms of the grave space,
Yeah.
let's say I live in the borough of Newham, for example. Am I only allowed to be buried in the borough of Newham, or can I go to, for example, Birmingham?
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question. In Newham, the cemeteries only allow Newham residents to be buried within Newham itself. So that's where we got initially a problem in itself. Within Newham as well, there's a few cemeteries. There was one today who said that basically if it says COVID-19 on there, if it's a COVID-19 person who's passed away, they will not allow them to be buried at the cemetery. So we're encountering these problems every day, new ones coming along in terms of what's going on. Hence why we're saying if they can be accommodated within their local, the local amenities in the local boroughs, please try and do so. It eases the burden on basically other cemeteries in terms of what they can do, what they can't do. Hence, Gardens of Peace, there's only so much they can do. You've got to understand that they've got staff there as well. If their staff become ill, then, Allah forbid it doesn't occur, but then, they may have to stop the cemetery, the burials as well. It hasn't occurred, but I'm just trying to say that, if we don't be careful, if we don't adhere to the procedures, the processes, then things could escalate for us and, could become problematic. Try and understand the situation. No one wants to make anything difficult for the family at all. We're trying to actually try and help them in any way possible. But because of the circumstances, there are certain rules and regulations we have to abide by. For example, you've lost a loved one. It's fully understandable that the family wants to see the face before they actually depart, etc., things like that. However, you've got to understand that, if you're in quarantine, it's not possible. And unfortunately, it's not something that we can accommodate. We've got to take a look at the rules and regulations and the processes, and not only that, but the health and safety of everyone else, which is paramount. So we've got to keep a lookout on that, and ensure that everything is done in the proper procedure and proper manner in terms of actually doing that. But you don't have to be buried within the borough. That's not a case there. However, if it is possible, it's more practical at the moment, then it'd be best to try and do that at the present moment.
So, alhamdulillah, like 15 years ago, 15, 20 odd years ago, before the time of 3G, 4G, 5G, it would be difficult to possibly even do video calling and things like that. Do you get families doing that now? Seeing their loved ones via video call before?
We don't. Well, we haven't been running for that long. I've got to emphasise that in terms of that. We haven't. As far as my experience is concerned with the Muslim Patel Burial Trust, we haven't had that. And also you want to try and abide by the sunnahs and what's allowed, what's permissible, what's not permissible, etc., things like that as well. So no, we haven't had that request. I hope we don't get that request, because it'd be fairly difficult to deal with in terms of actually doing it, because we've got to adhere to the processes as well. But what we've been doing at the moment is simply, picking up the bodies from the mortuaries, as well as trying to assist with the administration process if we can do, taking them for ghusl. And because of the time essence, we can't really do much as well. Like Sheikh Yunus said earlier on, we can't have many family members there at all. At the ghusl procedure, there's no family members there at all. Again, in regards to the actual burial process, cemeteries have got their rules and regulation in terms of how many are permissible, how many are not permissible. So we've got to adhere to all of that as well. But we haven't, fortunately, had anyone filming the actual burial itself. I wouldn't be too comfortable with it, I've got to say.
And I've seen some images of when the janazah prayer takes place. So in a normal situation, the janazahs that I've attended are often in the masjid, and you have a packed out masjid where family, friends come for the janazah.
Yeah.
What's the case now? Is the janazah happening?
No, absolutely, absolutely. It is happening. The prayer is happening. Let's emphasize that first of all. Everything that is required to do a burial, that is occurring. Let's not beat around the bush. Let people, let people be comfortable with that first of all. That everything that is required, it is Farz Sunnah, alhamdulillah, that does take place. I mean, the best person will be our guest once we get him back from East London Masjid. I mean, East London Masjid, when they have the prayer, there's thousands of people. We've lost the masjid at the moment where the prayers can't take place there. But what tends to happen at the moment is that, like the site that we've got at the Paternal Muslim burial area, we've got a prayer allocation there. So we normally do it down there in terms of taking place. Wherever the cemetery is, it takes place there.
Okay, we're just about to go for a break, inshallah.
Right.
So I'd like to remind the viewers at home, again, feel free to call in, join the discussion, ask your questions. We've got Imtiaz Patel from the Muslim Ghusl Services who will be able to answer your questions with regards to burying or general funeral services. Inshallah, we'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. I wanna testify that we have one God and His name is Allah. He's the only one, the merciful. I wanna testify that our final messenger is Muhammad Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I wanna testify that we have 5 pillars in Islam. They make up and shape what a Muslim is. Number 1, Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. To testify. Number 2, Salah, praying 5 times a day, thanking our Lord for every blessing we have. Number 3, Ramadan, fasting 1 month of the year, cleansing ourselves in the month of the Quran. Number 4, Zakat, charity for the needy, 2.5% of our yearly wealth. Number 5, pilgrimage to the house of Allah, Mecca and Medina, we call it Hajj. I wanna testify that we have one God and His name is Allah. He's the only one, the merciful. I wanna testify that our final messenger is Muhammad Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I wanna testify that we have 6 tenets of Islam, shaping our faith and our creed. Number 1, Tawheed, that is Allah's oneness. Allah has no partners, He's the only one. Number 2, Malaika, belief in Allah.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Coronavirus, the Global Pandemic. So far today, we've had a number of guests. We've still got Imtiaz Patel, in fact, with us. We've had Maulana Yunus Tudwala, the head of chaplaincy of the Barts Health NHS Trust, and we've had Dr. Hamza, who's a doctor in one of the ICU units in London. But let's continue our conversation just before the break, inshallah.
Yeah.
We were discussing about the requirements if one needs all these extra things like coffin and headstones and graves. Not from an Islamic perspective, but like the cost involved when it comes to burial.
Yeah, sure. It comes down to people's, personal preferences. For example, some people do want headstones actually done. Certain cemeteries, basically, once a headstone's done, you've got to do it within a year sort of perspective. Again, what design you want, how you want it, etc. But that's all down to the individual in terms of how they actually want to get things done, how they want to do it. Obviously, personally, and I would always say simplicity is better, and it's better as well in terms of doing it. But it all comes down to personal preferences and what families want, what people want in those sorts of capacity. We don't get involved in that.
I'm guessing they should seek advice from like a Islamic scholar.
Definitely, 100%. I would say that get advice from a scholar in terms of what's permissible, what's not permissible, what's right, what's good, what's not. Rather than actually just making judgment calls or just following general advice.
Because every cemetery I've been to, for example, there's some cemeteries I've been, Muslim cemetery.
Yeah.
They have like plaques, wooden plaques with just the name and date of birth.
Just what I've seen, Gardens of Peace, it's a simple process whereby, listen, all the graves are in a certain format. The headstones, you've got one option in terms of having that. There's no plants or anything like that at all. Simple, but mashallah, it looks beautiful. So, it doesn't have to be a grandeur sort of thing. Just have a simple thing. Alhamdulillah, it looks as beautiful as anything else. And so, get the right scholar to advise you in terms of what's right, what's not right, and seek their advice and follow it.
So you mentioned earlier about you guys are volunteers who run this service.
That's correct, yeah.
That must be a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I mean, I've got to mention, first of all, the Talati family who are actually doing it. Because this idea spawned from basically what we were doing at the Patel Muslim Burial Trust. All the guys that are down there for the number of years, they've just been volunteering sort of thing, whereby there was one caretaker and it's heavily reliant upon volunteers. Like I said, what goes on behind the scenes, people don't realize. But what we're also trying to do there, for example, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So inshallah, during the summer, we're planning to have a couple of days, maybe a couple of days over a 2-3 week period, whereby, there's quite a few renovation works required. So, young, fit, able men, whoever's available, then, we'll try and get 20, 30, 40 volunteers and try and get a lot of work done over there. Could be, just clearing some landscape, maybe some stones, etc., things like that, getting everything prepared in advance. But that's what tends to be heavily reliant upon the community in terms of people actually doing things. In terms of the service that's been operated at the moment, it's all fully voluntary. I've got to thank the actual volunteers in terms of what they're doing, in terms of the imams that are doing it. I mentioned it before, but it's time constraint. It's not just an easy thing. Today they done free ghusls. It's not just a simple thing of rocking up, just doing it within 10 minutes and that's it, you scarper off. And also you've got to thank the families as well. Some of the guys are away. I mean, I've got to thank my wife. I was away from 9:30 in the morning, returned at 4:30 when I was expected back around 2. So, you're committing time, you've got families at home, but for the good. And inshallah, whatever we're doing, inshallah, Allah accepts it and rewards everyone for whatever they're doing. Yeah.
So the ghusl process itself, how long does that take? Is it a lengthy process?
It's not a lengthy process at all. I mean, obviously, we've got dedicated people actually doing it. So we've got some dedicated persons within the teams. Like we said, they've been trained up to actually deliver the actual process in itself, adhering to, the PP and what's actually required. So, but it's not, we're talking about 30 minutes to 45 minutes in terms of the actual process itself.
Okay, I believe we have Brother Khidr back. Just before we get to Brother Khidr, I would like to remind the viewers at home, feel free to call in and join the discussion at any time. The number's at the bottom of the screen. Let's take it back to Brother Khidr. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Khidr.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Apologies for the earlier disruption. My mic wasn't that good.
No problem. I believe there was a technical glitch on our side too. So we were talking about your role at East London Masjid. So what did you do at East London Masjid?
Yes, so I'm actually the media and communications manager at the East London Mosque. I handle much of the media side as well as overlooking the multimedia side of a lot of the publications and content that we produce.
Okay. Since the closure of the masjid, what has East London Masjid been doing for the community?
Well, subhanAllah, since the closure, straight away we actually had a meeting straight the following morning. And we actually took a three-pronged approach on how we could actually help our community. So the first method that we actually looked at was media. And what we mean by media is essentially making sure all our digital services up to date, running, and making sure we were doing everything we could. So one of those was making sure all our musallis, congregants, and people who are keeping an eye on what's going on were reading the updates to the website. We were making sure that we had updates on our social media. We created a Telegram group so that people could stay informed. And on top of that, we also increased the number of digital classes that we provided. For example, live Q&As with our imams, reminders, as well as other classes that we considered were important. On top of that, the second prong that I would say is our advice and support line. Subhanallah, a lot of those that were affected, especially were the elderly, and we considered it that quite important that since they'll be isolated in their homes, much of their social interactions that they get throughout the day is from the masjid. So we made sure that we started a phone line where people, whoever needs to talk, can hear a friendly voice on the other side. On top of that, we carried on our imam consultations, our ongoing counseling for women and anyone that needed help going to being referred to food banks and such, but had difficulty with language such as Arabic or Bengali. We had bilingual staff to help with that. And then our third prong approach, which I would say is arguably our biggest and most widest effort, is our direct community services. So what I would say is that would include food and hygiene and medical drop-offs in partnership with the local food bank. So we'd have staff who would regularly go off and pick up any medicine for people from the pharmacy. People can request this service through our emails and requesting it via phone as well from us. We also made sure that our will writing service was continued in this difficult time. As we know, unfortunately, there is a likeliness of high casualties, especially from Muslims. So it's very important that people have their Islamic wills in check. So we made sure that carried on. On top of that, we also have ongoing partnerships and coordination with Eden Care, Muslim Burial Fund, Eternal Gardens, Gardens of Peace, as well as our own funeral service, Haji Taslim funeral service, making sure that we can arrange for the likely increase in burials that will be needed. So, for example, we had an appeal that only came out the other day for PPE equipment for those that will be dealing with the ghusl and the transport of the deceased. And alhamdulillah, subhanallah, the Muslim community, mashallah, is very generous, and we managed to raise 80,000 pounds, alhamdulillah, almost. And on top of that, we've also had up to 50 volunteers come forward to help, to be trained to help prepare them for ghusl and transporting the bodies of deceased. Alhamdulillah, from I think about a third of them were women, actually. So we're also actually preparing storage space for up to 40 bodies in case there's an overflow, which we are expecting. So subhanallah, that's only the face of it, and I'm informed on the top level, but ever since the closure of the masjid, the brothers and sisters have been working even harder than when the masjid was open to make sure that they can serve their community. So alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, it's great work that you guys are doing. May Allah Azza wa Jalla reward you guys, everyone at East London Masjid, and all the volunteers there. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We'll hopefully speak to you soon, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah barak. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah. So East London Masjid themselves, they've been very, very busy in terms of their burials as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's what we're emphasising, that different local areas, they've got their own facilities as well. So it's paramount that people basically contact their closest, the areas themselves first of all, because the services are being provided, alhamdulillah, like we just heard from Kizit itself, what's actually going on there. So mashallah, that's really, really good in itself in terms of that taking place. But again, one of the things to emphasise there, and it would have actually been good to speak to Kizit about that, but is the cemetery space. As far as I know, I don't think there's much in any graveyard space around the Tower Hamlets area. So again, they would be reliant upon quite a lot of the actual burials taking place in surrounding areas, or in terms of actually those taking place.
So just to understand, so there is a shortage of space, a small shortage of space, but there's a slight delay in finding it. Someone will always get a space, but just a slight delay in finding
it. Inshallah. I mean, I can't vouch for that in terms of everyone will get that. There is no need to panic. Let's understand that. Everyone that's been speaking throughout the whole program, they've said that as well. There is no need to panic, and that's number one. Inshallah, everything will be catered for. It's just a case of having some sabr, having some patience, and inshallah, things can be done. However, some support from a wider perspective would be very, very handy indeed. For example, just kind of on our personal perspective, within Newham itself, if there was some pressure applied to the cemeteries, I'm not from that background, I don't know about the political landscape, etc., things like that. But if there were things that could be done, and if there were people out there who could kind of help on that sort of level to basically get some pressure within the cemeteries and kind of say who we can get, who we can't get, then that would be very, very handy indeed in terms of doing that.
Okay, we've got our next guest today. Our next and final guest for the show for this evening is Sheikh Dr. Saeed Al-Qadi. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. How are you, Sheikh? Oops, I think we've lost the Sheikh. Apologies, we'll try to get the Sheikh back soon. But we do have a caller on the line. Okay. Let's take the call, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from? Assalamu alaikum, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I'm calling from East London, brother.
MashaAllah. Yes, brother.
How is everyone?
Alhamdulillah, we are good. Alhamdulillah. What about yourself?
Alhamdulillah. Just a question regarding the brother Imtiaz Patel was doing the services of the Muslim Ghusl.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
Is it based in Newham?
Yes, Muslim Ghusl services, they're based in Newham, yes.
So, as far I know, the East London Mosque, the Taslim funeral, they are not doing any COVID-19 funeral service. They are doing the normal one, normal disease. So, Brother Imtiaz is doing the ghusl like nowadays it's a bit confusing, every channel. Some people saying is they are not doing ghusl, just burying like in the bag, whatever is the body is like this. So, Imtiaz Patel is doing it to the COVID-19 people, the ghusl and everything is a complete service, or is it like just the ghusl?
Okay, Jazakallah khair. We'll let Brother Imtiaz answer that question, inshallah.
First of all, let's emphasize, we had Sheikh Yunus earlier on stating that COVID-19 ghusls can take place. Let's not be around the bush. They can take place. He stated what the procedures were, what was actually going on in terms of that. In terms of whether East London Mosque are doing them or not, I'm not sure about that at all in terms of whether they are. As far as I know, I think they are. However, not only us, like we said, the numbers that we provided earlier on, or they can obtain them from yourselves later on, Woburn Forest, Stamford Hill, that I'm aware of, they all do ghusls for persons whether they are COVID-19 or not.
So just for the ghusls that take place with COVID-19,
yeah.
the people doing the ghusl, they need to be in special clothing known as PPE, personal protective equipment?
Yeah, to be honest, regardless of who it is, we do the same procedure for everyone. So we have the PPEs, regardless whether they're COVID-19 or whether they're not COVID-19. Because if it's good enough for COVID-19, why don't we have them for everyone else as well? So we adhere to that.
And for the viewers at home, what does the PPE, personal protective equipment, consist of? What is it?
Okay, basically, like Sheikh stated earlier on as well, I don't actually do the ghusls personally myself, but the staff members do. But they have the aprons on, they've got the actual masks on itself. They also wear a visor on top of that as well. They've got the gloves on, etc., conforming to the specific requirements, all of that. The room that they're actually using is properly ventilated. And so basically all the rules and regulations are adhered to in a proper format. They should be doing the ghusls regardless of whether they're COVID-19 or not, because there's nothing based against that. However, obviously each area is according to their own. As far as I'm aware, Tower Hamlets are doing them. East London Mosque are doing them. It may be just a thing to actually clarify, but we do persons who are COVID-19. But like I said, go to the local amenities first, see if they can do them, because like I said, we're reliant completely upon volunteers, and we are inundated with calls already in terms of, conforming and assisting people in terms of what we can do. So I'll emphasize again, please try your local amenities first and see if they can do them or not.
How does one find out who the local service provider is?
Yeah, what we could do, we can provide the telephone numbers too in terms of basically what's going on, who to contact, etc., things like that, because we've got the Forum for Waltham Forest, so there's a special dedicated number for them in terms of who they can contact there. I'm sure with East London Mosque we can get in touch with Kizzer again and ask Kizzer for a specific telephone number whom they can contact there. So what would be handy actually, and I think it would be a good thing as well, is if we had telephone numbers for London in itself. I know there's a special service in Leicester. I know there's a service in Blackburn, etc., things like that as well. So it would be good if there's people out there listening in and who are from those specific areas, if they actually did cascade the telephone numbers or etc. across to yourselves, and maybe we can just get something out there whereby it's got the telephone numbers for all the different areas.
So yeah. Let's say outside London for now.
Sure.
Who should be let's say someone's passed away. Mm-hmm. The family, who should they contact first?
I would say contact your mosque. All the masjids, alhamdulillah, the imams are doing extraordinary work. I can't emphasize the amount of work that they're doing out there. Although the masjids may be closed, there are things that they are doing, the activities that they're doing. So contact your local mosque in the first instance. They will have someone whom you can contact through there, if not within the area, in a neighbouring borough or whatever it may be in a neighbouring town. I'm sure there'll be areas available there or numbers available there for people who can actually assist it within that.
Okay, mashallah. Yeah. Do you have any personal stories that you can share with us?
Can do. It's tough out there. Let's not be around the bush. Alhamdulillah, I haven't had anyone. My father-in-law's in hospital right now. My wife, she had a coronavirus itself. We have got one brother who's a volunteer at the cemetery, Yunus Bay, who basically, alhamdulillah, he's had coronavirus as well. There's another brother, part of Abdullah, aged Shakil, who's had it as well. Let's not be around. Some people who get it and get it aggressively, it is tough. It is very, very tough indeed, and you've got to be prepared for that. It's not an easy ride. It takes a long time to actually overcome that itself. On a personal level, like I said, my wife, etc., my father-in-law, it's taken nearly 3 weeks for that to overcome that. Alhamdulillah, he's getting better. He's off the ventilator. He's on the oxygen machine right now. But people do come across, they recover as well. Like we've had, for example, we had a doctor over there who is actually saying it. People have this preconception that, listen, if I'm going to go in hospital, I'm going to come out in a body bag. It's not the case. It's not the case. The recovery rates are really, really good indeed. But that's outside of it in terms of what goes on. In terms of in terms of burial side of things, alhamdulillah, tomorrow we've got to pick up 2 bodies, 2 deceased persons from St. Thomas's. There's another one from Newham itself. I've got to thank people. This ambulance has been donated by a masjid in Stoke Newington. So they provided us with a van whereby, there's coffin space down there in terms of where we can actually do it. So alhamdulillah, they've donated it for us to use down there. There's the coffins that we kind of use to transport the bodies in. Some of the guys in the background that you can see over there, they're just the volunteers. This is the grave at the Muslim Burial Trust, whereby this is the way in which we actually, when you were asking the question earlier on about how we actually bury, this is a plank planks that are used sideways. So this is an actual grave in itself at the Patel Muslim Burial Trust, how we're doing. It doesn't look that big, that's over 6 foot deep. And then those planks are used across, just to go across the across. So rather than using a coffin to bury, this is how we actually do the burial within that itself in the Patel Muslim Burial Trust.
So why do they use the planks, out of curiosity?
Rather than using a coffin and rather than the actual soul just being buried straight onto the body in itself, basically the body's placed there, then the planks go across as a kind of protective sheet sort of thing, protective mode, and then the soul's put on top. So hence why that's actually done there. So we try not to use a coffin wherever permissible or wherever possible, but dependent upon the graveyards itself. Alhamdulillah, all the ones that we've used, it's not been, the coffins have not been used at the moment, but that's a procedure. Yeah.
So is this common in every country?
I'd love to tell you that. I do know the answer, but unfortunately I don't. I mean, you know, my experiences in Saudi is that, you know, they use, they're buried with bricks, etc., things like that as well. The graves actually reused within a short period of time as well. So different countries are different ways. For example, within UK itself as well, I know that in Lancashire they've got to use an actual coffin to actually bury because of the circumstances, because of the soil over there. I know it sounds quite funny, but yeah, depending upon the soil, the water content, what actually occurs, so all those things. But, you know, it's a learning thing. You know, I'm not an expert within there. Like I said, you know, I'm just a volunteer within the actual scheme of things. So, you know, in terms of actual, you know, it's a learning thing in terms of what comes across. But different countries have different procedures, as do local towns within the UK itself. I mean, I'd like to take the opportunity. I mean, one of the things I think we had Sheikh Yunus on earlier on. I've got to emphasize this guy, the amount of work he has done, not only for the Gujarati community, for the wider Muslim community, I cannot emphasize in words. And it's a story I'll just tell you while we're actually here. My nan was in hospital approximately 6 months ago, and he came to visit her. He's a family friend, etc. And we were just there chatting. And I said to him, I said, Sheikh Yunus, you've been doing this for a long time. You know, the amount of work you do, etc., things like that. Do people actually write in and thank you, you know, your staff or whatever?
I'm really sorry.
We've run out of time, yeah.
Yeah, we've run out of time.
No problem.
I would love to hear this story, inshallah. And
Sure.
I think our viewers would love to hear the story as well, inshallah. But unfortunately, it's come to an end of the show. I would like to remind the viewers we're live every Tuesday, Thursdays and Sundays at 8:30 p.m. where you can call in, take part in the discussion or ask questions to any of our panelists, inshallah. The number's always at the bottom of our screen. Feel free to always tune in. We're live between 8:30 and 10 p.m. We'll see you on Thursday, inshallah, for another show of Coronavirus Global Pandemic. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.